1:30, and the regular meeting of the City Planning and Zoning Board on Thursday the 4th will come to order. First of all, we have preliminary matters, additions and deletions to our agenda for today. Tim?
Mr. Chairman, the staff has nothing.
Does any of the board members have anything in particular? Okay. Well, before we begin this meeting, I would just like to make one comment, if I may, please, and I'd like to wish and appreciate Linda joining our board this morning.
Thank you.
So welcome here, and I hope you enjoy being with us, and I hope we can still serve the public as well as we always have, and we'll continue to do it with you.
That's my best hope, too.
I know it is. I'd like to now go to the election of officers, and I'm going to look to Peggy. Okay.
Let's just go ahead and call for nominations. Nominations for chair.
I nominate Larry.
And I would like to nominate Honey.
I'd like to nominate Larry.
Okay, Sherry, shall we just go ahead and have the... Okay.
The first nomination was for Mr. Lawfer. Mrs. Hillman.
Yes.
Ms. Polinsky.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What are we voting on? For Honey or for Larry?
For Mr. Lawfer.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Mrs. Manous.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer.
No.
Passes 4-1.
Well, he can decline.
He can.
Can he decline if he wants to?
If he would prefer to, yes, he could. Otherwise, he can proceed to chair the meeting.
I think I've lost the protocol. I'm sorry. I think I lost the protocol here. Could we explain this a little bit better?
I think what Mr. Cocteau asked was, could Mr. Lawfer still decline even though he's been elected? And yes, he could. Technically, I guess he'd be resigning. But if not, then he needs to chair the meeting and ask for nominations for vice chair.
I'm going to look for vice chair. Okay.
Proceed.
I'd like to nominate Honey Manous.
I'd like to nominate Honey Manous.
Very good.
If there are no other nominations, then Honey Manous is our new vice chair. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. With that now behind us, I'd like to go with the approval of the minutes for our regular meeting. And everybody's had a chance to observe them and read them. Any comments on them? Changes?
I didn't see any change. I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
We have a move for approval in a second. Vote, please.
Second. Everybody got it? I can't hear on this side. I'm sorry.
Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. None. Okay. This aside now. Okay. The next item is open for public comment for anybody who would like to speak today on any particular matter. You can come before the board now and speak. If you're going to speak on probably the main item today, which is the three-story unit on Royal Palm Point, I might suggest that you do that within the confines of that opening for you. It's because there'll be an additional public comment for that. But you have the right to come forward now if you would like to. So if seeing anybody, would you please come forward? The public comment is now open. Seeing nobody else coming forward at this time, I will now close the public comment. So the next item on our agenda then is a site plan application to allow the construction of a three-story, 15-unit private hotel with a restaurant and underground garage. The location of it is 1 Royal Palm Point. And this is a quasi-judicial item. And before we begin that, I had one comment that I would like to make, and that is there were several people in our local paper and other places that indicated somewhat of, I think, a misconception about this board's opportunities. And if I'm incorrect, I'd like to have Peggy please immediately correct me. The individuals that I'm not speaking of necessarily believe that the board may have more power in some cases to change things than they really do. This board is basically part of to find out if you're meeting the requirements of the zoning applications that you're putting forward to be able to do what you'd like to do. If an individual buys a piece of property and chooses to do something with it, and it's within the zoning laws, whether we think it's in the best public interest or not, unless he's in violation of something, he gets to do that. And we cannot stop that individual from doing it. At least it's my interpretation. We cannot. Now, if there's some particular items within that application that don't meet the criteria, at that point in time, we can object to it and find reasons to make them comply with that, or we can't move forward. And we do, in some cases, have some discretionary powers, but they're very limited at most. And an example, if you bought a home for yourself or a lot and wanted to build a home on it, and all of a sudden the people didn't like it because they were using it as a local park for where they were having their pavilion, for having picnics and things, and just because you bought the lot and moved into it, you don't get to have your picnics there anymore. The people that purchased the property as private citizens get to utilize that property to their needs as long as they're meeting the code requirements. And several of our people in our community appear that is not quite clear to them. And I wanted to know that this board will try to represent the city and the residents of the city as well as the property owners as we go through this process. And I thank you for the indulgence of that moment in time to try to explain that. But I did see that there was, and I got a couple phone calls about it from people, and people talking to me on this saying, can you do this? And I know it was a popular place for a lot of people, and I respect that. So with that, I'm going to move forward and
Yes, and if I could also just add that any of the emails that you all may have gotten, or any phone calls or any other site visitations, are all ex parte communications that will need to be disclosed at B on your preliminary matters.
yeah, okay. So now, let me just get my case title is SP 1400009, and I think I've mentioned that except for that number. Is that correct? We're through that. Disclosure by the City Council by the board members here, any particular ex parte communications we've had about this. And I have to admit that 2 or 3 people, I did not even know their names, and I don't recall them at this point, came to me and spoke to me about it. And it was just on-the-street conversation. And I also had one email, and it's already been copied, and it was also copied to a number of other board members, I believe.
And I believe you all have that in front of you now.
We do. Anybody else have anything to disclose?
No, sir.
Okay. Swearing in of the applicant, staff, and all witnesses by the city clerk.
Anybody that's going to testify, if you would please stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you.
Tim, are you going to make a
The staff presentation will be by Gail Lafferty.
Okay, Gail.
Okay. The proposed project includes a 3-story, 15-unit private hotel with a 2-story restaurant and outdoor dining area, along with an underground garage. Also, it will include the existing boardwalk on the southern shoreline will be extended, and a viewing platform is to be located on the southeastern shoreline. An existing restaurant, frame building, and shed are proposed to be demolished to make way for the redevelopment of the site. And in your packet on attachment A, there is the project description and fact sheet, including the general background information and site information details. When we're reviewing the site plan, section 64.10 requires that all approved site plan amendments to meet certain general review, performance, and development standards. Staff finds that the proposed site plan meets all these standards, except as noted below. Of these standards, the two most relevant to this project are the performance standards for the proposed use, design, and layout of the redevelopment, and the project's compliance with all pertinent provisions of the land use development regulations. In regards to section 64.10A6, the site plan compliance with all the development regulations was reviewed by the Planning Development, Public Works Department, and other reviewing agencies, and the site plan meets all of the height, floor area ratio, open space, bulk lot coverage, and setback requirements, and parking standards. And that's all provided in attachment A with your packet. Indian River Traffic Engineering Division determined that the peak hour increase was low enough not to require an area of influence according to the Indian River County Land Development Code criteria. And additionally, the adjacent segment of Indian River Boulevard between 21st Street and State Road 60, Merrill Barber Bridge, is currently operating under 80% of its capacity. Therefore, no intersections require analysis. So they find that it meets the road concurrency standards. And the applicant has also requested a waiver from the planning director of the requirement to provide 2 loading spaces. And the applicant proposes that the enclosed loading area will be provided for service vehicles, which will park on the exit driveway while loading and unloading. And this will be limited to the hours when the restaurant is not open for business. And pursuant to section 63.09D, the planning director, along with the city's engineer staff, has approved this waiver, subject to the condition that the loading and unloading be just during those hours when the restaurant is not open. The project is required to meet the new stormwater management standards of section 73.26 that requires the first 1.5 inches of rainfall to be retained before discharge into the city's approved system. That now has been complied with. So that
It's in compliance.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. And so staff finds that the site plan is compliant with all the provisions of the land development regulations, subject to the condition of restricting the unloading and unloading activities. And with section 64.10B, the proposed private hotel and restaurant are complementary to the existing uses of Royal Palm Point. We find that the proposed layout of the driveways and parking creates no safety hazards and will not have an adverse effect on adjacent properties, and all the required parking will be provided on site. The dumpster location has now been approved by our solid waste department, and staff finds that the site is compliant with the performance standards of section 64.10B. And based on the above analysis and findings, staff finds that the proposed site plan application meets the provision for site plan approval and recommends approval of the site plan subject to the following conditions. And there are 2 conditions on that list that are now in compliance, and that is number 4 and number 12.
Okay. Any questions of Gail right now? So there's nothing as far as contingencies at this point in time that's still open, is that correct? 4 and 12 are?
4 and 12, that was the stormwater
Right.
and the dumpster. There's still the fire department and water and sewer.
They have signed off on them?
They have not.
They have not.
They
So
have
they're
not.
still subject to?
That is number 11 and 13.
11 and 13. No, all right.
Perhaps if you could just read the ones that still aren't compliant so that the listening public can hear, because they don't
That
have this in
are-
front
are-
of them, that are still that are still conditions.
Okay. Okay, and a lot of these are typical site plan conditions because it is in a flood zone. So we have the requirement that within 21 days of the placement of the lowest floor, they have to do the FEMA form.
No, I was going to say, Attorney, I think what we need to read are the non-compliant, the terms for elevation.
help
We
us.
don't need to read all these
Right.
things. So I would suggest we read the
water and sewer and
the
the
water and
engineering.
the water main and the
Give us a number, too, because there's a number of them.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's
sure.
11.
Okay.
Yeah, give the number.
Okay, the ones that are still outstanding that need to be revised prior to approval is number 11. The water main shall be revised according to the marked up 8.5 by 11
Okay.
pages of sheet 7 for the revisions to the proposed water main.
Okay.
And then number 13, the site plan shall be revised based on the review comments of Indian River Fire Protection as follows. They need to correct the turning radius, letter A. B, the FDC shall be relocated so that it will not be blocked by the gate when the gate is in the open position. And C, all the existing and proposed valves for the proposed connection to the existing 6-inch fire hydrant line shall be depicted with the relocation of the fire hydrant.
Okay. So all the other, and I'm going back, all the other ones have
1
now.
through 10. 1 through 10 are accomplished.
The other ones are the standard, like, with the FEMA requirements, the right-of-way permits, license agreement with.
In any firm.
A lot of these
in
can't
any
be.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, a lot of these can't be done until construction is underway. For instance, they're going to need a
21
floodproofing
days.
because the garage, underground garage, is floodproofed in the A zone, which they're allowed to do. But until you have the structural
Can't do it.
drawings, they can't do that. We're looking like a site plan. So a lot of these conditions go with or follow on to the site plan anyway. We just put those in there to assure that all the steps are done in this process and all the permits are.
It would be suggested, though, that any affirmative motion on this would include those still.
Yes, we'd
until they're
still add
complied with,
these
so
as
they need to be in the
conditions
motion.
on the permit
Okay.
to be.
Okay.
On the underground garage, does that work with the stormwater management?
Yes, it's all taken care of. Yeah, I think the underwater.
It's
yes,
included.
yes, it's a separate issue, but it's all taken into account when they're looking at the storm
Okay.
on the
Okay.
runoff.
I'm very curious about the what was done to reconfigure the solid waste, only because I'm looking at this diagram and I'm looking at a wonderful area here, and then it's tiny little for dumpster and loading, and
Well-
I'm having trouble understanding the traffic pattern. What's public? What's private? I see one ways.
No. Yeah, they can explain it. See, a lot of it has to do, when you do these dumpsters, sometimes they may be in a funny position, but they work out with solid waste the procedures how to get in there. And that's why that issue came up, and it wasn't totally clear, and I believe the applicant has talked to solid waste, and they can fill you in more on
And you
that.
provided the waiver from 2 to 1.
I
yeah.
provided the waiver on the unloading
Okay.
area.
So you haven't gone back to that at all? It remains 1?
I haven't changed that. No, that's still in there.
Other questions of Gail?
One moment.
Okay. Linda?
The loading on the, when the restaurant, limited to when the restaurant is not open, how is this going to be determined? I mean, I just don't see, this is a private club. They can be open whenever they want. They can do what they want.
Well, they have a condition that they agree to. I mean, it's in their self-interest. They start having problems with unloading that are blocking their guests coming in and all that, I think that's going to be, they're going to get a lot of complaints besides being a private club.
Yeah.
I mean, if we start getting complaints that they're delivering, that we're having linen delivered at noon and, food deliveries coming in, and it's causing some problems, it'll come to our attention. But I think it's in their self-interest to do this. And let's face it, a lot of our businesses, a lot of the unloading and loading is done in streets and all that. So, where it's a necessity, we really want to see it on site. For instance, some of these larger shopping centers you'll do that. Other things we try to work with a smaller project, so your whole property isn't taken up as a loading zone. It can be handled differently. So there's some flexibility in how we do that.
Our vision plan was always so very clear that we kind of provide you want to be good neighbors. You want to provide a transition zone between, a commercial and then a residential. And you have, mixed use in Royal Palm, but you have residential immediately south of that.
Well, that's all commercial under our zoning, so they could run that as a hotel down there. So, I mean, they're all in the C1A zoning. So we do
Well, I'm
not,
talking about the area south.
No, I know what you're. Yeah,
area
and
there.
that's not it. They're condos, but they're C1A on that. So
But even across the canal.
on the canal, you're correct about that. But
Yeah.
the unloading isn't going to directly impact people across the canal.
Okay.
It may affect the people that are trying to use the park and other things, or even, as I said, guests and using that for the club or the restaurant, hotel.
Want to prevent problems.
No, I understand. That's fine.
Well, one of the issues with the parking is we're already having that on out on Sexton Park Plaza, is that a parking area is owned by a private, in that case a restaurant, and they close off that parking, which is when we have huge parking issues in Sexton Plaza. We do have, we need parking on this Royal Palm Point when we have events. For example. And if this is closed off, we're losing a significant amount of parking that has been available to the general public in the past. Because the parking that was there was generally never blocked off.
No, but there was private property. They could have blocked it off.
I understand, but
So, I mean,
it was traditional not to. So.
However, that's not.
Yeah, I know. Well, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Could you review the traffic flow? Because at this point, I know there's a loop road which curves around and then starts coming west again. And on this diagram, I'm just having the worst time understanding it because there's directionals one way and doesn't work for me.
Ms. Manous, I would. These are things. Let's let the client kind of run through that. They're much more familiar. I mean, we're going through that, and they can.
That's why I'm holding my questions till the client
Right.
gets
So
up.
okay.
Thank you.
No additional questions for Gail right now? Let's let the applicant make his presentation. Would you like to come forward? You have been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas J. Baird. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Jones Foster in West Palm Beach, and we also have a Jupiter office where I work. Our firm's been representing the applicant for some time over the course of several projects. While I'm a lawyer, I'm also a certified planner, AICP, and I've been representing cities and counties and private developers for the last 30 years. Been the town attorney for the town of Jupiter for the last 23 years. And my purpose of being here is not to contest anything that the board may be thinking about the project or the staff. My purpose was I was asked to do an independent review of the project as well as the staff report and the opinion that Mr. McGarry had rendered in regards to the facility that is intended to be operated on this property. So in some ways I'm really here because my findings are essentially consistent with the staff's findings. My reason for being here is to say the staff report is a great report. I think it hit all of the points, and I concur with all of the points, and so does my client. Specifically, though, just to give you a kind of a summary, I find that the site plan's land use and zoning are appropriate for the site and the use that is being proposed, that the proposed use of a private hotel and restaurant is consistent and compatible with the surrounding properties and the existing uses on those properties, that the site plan meets all of the standards of the code and is therefore appropriate for approval. And we do agree to meet those conditions. We've thus far have met 2 of them. There are 11 to go, and Mr. Palin's going to take you through the site plan as well as those 2 conditions that require a change to the site plan and explain the traffic and any of the parking issues that the board has just raised. The site plan also meets all of the code's 18 development specifications. I want to touch on for a minute Mr. McGarry's opinion in regards to the private hotel use, condominium hotel use, as well as the restaurant. I am a former president of the Treasure Coast chapter of the American Planning Association, and as I said, I've done a lot of reviews of staff reports in my public sector work. I've done a lot of staff reports myself, and I found the opinion that Mr. McGarry wrote, maybe Gail wrote it, I don't know, maybe they collaborated on it, but I found it to be very well reasoned, it was practical, it was accurate, and most importantly, it's legally defensible. So the way I viewed the use issue was that the proposed private hotel, which is only open to club members and their guests, meets the code's definition of a hotel or motel, and it's permitted in the C1A district. The private dining facility meets the code's definition of a restaurant because it's a business which offers the sale of food, desserts, something I particularly like, beverages, something I also like when my work is done, in a ready-to-consume state, and it's also permitted in the C1A district. So I also looked at the issue of, well, if it didn't meet the definition of a restaurant, would this use still be permitted? And the answer to that is it's immaterial whether it's a private or public restaurant or a for-profit club or a private club. Whether or not it's a for-profit facility, it's permitted in the C1A district. And it's intended to be operated with the applicant's other facilities, so it's kind of an accessory to some of their other facilities in this. Now, I know this is a quasi-judicial procedure, and I know you all know that, and I know you know that your approval or your denial has got to be based on some evidence. And the evidence that's before you today all comes from both the staff report and what I've just presented, as well as what Mr. Palin's going to present. And that evidence basically is it meets all of the code criteria. It meets the definitions for private hotel facility. It meets the definition for a private restaurant or club. And there really isn't any evidence thus far to the contrary. Now, I don't know if any member of the public will speak, but if a member of the public does speak on the issue and believes that there is some evidence that is contrary to what the staff has found and what I've just recited, I'd appreciate the opportunity to just kind of find out what the basis of that contrary opinion is. I don't want to go into the cross-examination mode. That's not why I'm here. But if it's an issue that perhaps is resolvable, then we'd certainly like to address it while we're here. So with all of that, I'm going to ask Keith to come up and address any of the questions you may have on the site plan and also address those 2 conditions that were referenced. Thank you, Mr. Reluctant Chairman, and congratulations to you and the Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Keith Pellin with Kinley Horn & Associates, 445 24th Street, or Orange, California sometimes. It's great to be in California, but it's always great to come back here. Thank you, and I'll I think, pick up maybe a little bit where Gail left off in terms of the site plan. Is there a way to, I can point at this with my red pointer, but is there a mouse or anything that, so that you guys could see it on your screen?
Should be one in the drawer right there.
There's a mouse right here that should go away.
Can I, oh, there we go.
I think you should be.
We can do that.
Yeah.
That'll work.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect. I'll start, by generally saying, as you know, this part of Royal Palm Point actually, it's the old drawbridge. So this part of the point actually extends out into the water much farther than the Vero Isles fingers that are south of here. So really everything, we don't have any single-family homes, sort of staring us in the face across the canal. In fact, it's one of the best views in Vero Beach. But to, I guess, give you some specifics, as you know, the way Royal Palm Point is configured, it's kind of a one-way loop. And so the street immediately in front of the property goes one way to the east, and there are diagonal parking spaces right along here. So you go around the corner. Here's the fountain. The park building is here. This is a one-way drive aisle going west, and then this is also a one-way drive aisle going west. So the circulation is, you're coming down Royal Palm Point, you're heading east. You enter the property right here at this first driveway. You sort of go up a slight incline to get to this upper level of parking. And it's configured in that it will operate as a one-way circulation loop, although the parking on top is 90-degree and there's a two-way drive aisle. But for the most part, everybody's going to be going from east or from west to east. And then as you come through here, there's a covered drop-off space right here. There's a bypass lane over here. And then the exit ramp comes out right down here. There is also a second entrance right here, which accesses just the lower level of the parking garage. So, and I hesitate to call it a parking garage. It's really a layer of parking that is partially underground. And if you're familiar with the condominium buildings next door,
Elevations up here.
it will look pretty much exactly like that, in that it's about a half a layer down in the ground and then a half a layer up. So the first floor of those units on those condos is not at street level, it's up a few feet. So that's really the exact same thing we're talking about here. The underground parking basically covers the western half of the site, roughly, underneath the hotel building and underneath this parking, the front parking area. The restaurant over here is sitting pretty much at grade. So this entrance is to in and out of the 40 parking spaces that are down below. While that entrance will be open, essentially, it's the intention, I think, to use it primarily for valet parking. So you won't get a lot of sort of public going in and out of there, but that would be primarily valet. So the hotel building sits right here. It's 3 stories, 6 units roughly per floor. And fewer units on the upper level. And then the 2 buildings, the restaurant and the hotel, are essentially connected by a partially enclosed breezeway space. So if I'm coming to the restaurant, I park here under the porte cochere, I come into the lobby, the hotel lobby sits here, and then you go down a series of steps or in the elevator down to the entrance to the restaurant. So the restaurant is basically all of this building right here. Okay? With regard to Ms. Manous, your question about the solid waste, we have a dumpster enclosure right here. It's going to serve 2 purposes. One will be for garbage, but the other will also be for loading and bringing in of food service, just like the lobster shanty, did. And the issue of trucks coming before the restaurant is open, and that's pretty typical in a club or a restaurant environment. Lobster shanty operated the exact same way. So, those guys know how to make the operations work. So that's not a typical dumpster enclosure as we think of them in the city, because it's really part of the building. So it's a space that's gated that will be aesthetically done to match the building. So then outside of that, we have, as you know, there's already a boardwalk along 2 sides of the property here and here. It ends right here where the sort of the tone changes from dark to light. So we're proposing to extend that piece of boardwalk to the west property line, pretty much in the same manner as it is now. And then there's sort of this, what we're calling a viewing platform, an outdoor space that is mostly upland of the seawall, but there's a little bit that extends out beyond the seawall. Just like right now, there's kind of a corner piece that sticks out beyond the seawall. So that's just an outdoor sort of deck space, if you will. And the other thing we've got, we've located, in terms of the fire department comments, their concern was this exit radius going out of the project, and so we've modified this driveway to reflect their 55-foot radius. We are modifying the sidewalk out in the right-of-way just a little, so we're sort of, the ADA access to the property will come from here. So if somebody parks in the public parking out at Royal Palm, they can do one of two things. We would have handicap access up this sidewalk that runs kind of adjacent to the driveway up to the entrance, or we're proposing a small open stair pavilion here, so you can come off the parking lot, across the public sidewalk, up a few stairs to the stair pavilion, and then up a few more stairs to this upper level, and then simply walk through an opening in the porte cochere to get to the building. So there's two different ways to access it if you park out in the public parking on Royal Palm. Those are kind of the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any other specific questions you have about the plan. There has been discussion of, a water taxi potentially from the River Club to here, and we're providing sort of an opportunity for that to happen here or somewhere along, the south side of the property. It's not intended for boat docks or long-term mooring, but certainly if somebody wanted to come and tie their boat up and have lunch, they could do that, just as they could do it today at the Lobster Shanty. So that's not really going to change. There is no mooring along this edge of the property. This is pretty shallow. It has never been dockage and will not be in the future. So those are the highlights. We've got 61, 62 parking spaces on site, which meets the code, and that's about all I have to offer.
Questions of Keith?
I have a question about the retention area.
Yes.
I can't read the writing. Is it a fence?
No, we're handling retention in a couple of different ways. There's an area back here that will be about a 24 to 30 inch deep, almost like a dry detention pond, if you will. Because of our need to maximize the volume, we're proposing just a low wall around it so that it's almost like a little, it's like a depressed space rather than do the side slopes. And then in addition to that, we've got a series of exfiltration trenches that are underground that run pretty much around the perimeter underground to handle stormwater treatment and ultimately discharge. So that's how that's what that is right there. That's
I'm sorry, Linda, you're next. Go ahead.
Around the viewing platform, what kind of protection is there going to be for flood water coming out? And I know it's on the river, but protection for the people who are going to be going out there. Is there going to be a high enough wall for them to not worry about? A lot of them will probably be elderly.
Well, let's hope they're not out there in a flood, first of all. But I understand. Well, there is a seawall around the property now, but it's obviously, it's at grade. The only real design criteria that we're meeting with regard to the viewing platform or the boardwalk is that in the case of a hurricane or major wave action, then those boards just, they just release. I mean, they just get blown out.
Okay.
So there's no, and it will really look much like a dock or anything where it really doesn't have a railing around it or anything. It's really just it's a boardwalk essentially.
Okay. And just one other question. 61 parking spaces. I understand there's only 2 handicapped spots. From my experience, seeing it on a daily basis where I work, I don't think 2 handicapped spots would be good. You are over the amount of parking spaces that you do need. Being that it's a private club and will be somewhat elderly people, don't you think that maybe there should be more than just 2?
Well,
again, I see it every day.
2 is what's required by the code, and so that's what we've provided. They do take up a lot of space, frankly. But I think the other consideration is that because of the probably heavy valet situation here, those people would likely be dropped off, and and the whole porte cochere and everything else is very accessible. So in that situation, I don't think, and Kevin and Steve are here as the operators to maybe address that, but I don't think they feel the need for more spaces than that. I mean, they kind of understand their clientele and what they have at the River Club, for instance.
Right.
So I think we have it addressed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
On your the observation area there, that round thing, are you planning any outdoor dining there?
No, not really.
Okay. No, or not really. No, they're two different answers.
Well, there will be some seating out there. We're talking about maybe fire pits, stuff like that, but not a dining service.
No dining, because I'm concerned about food and drink out there. If you have boards that'll be coming up with water, it would be an opportunity for pollution to get down into the lagoon.
Well, we don't allow any dining, any use over submerged waters,
Right.
and this is FDEP, and they're not going to allow that.
Right.
So
I just want to make sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, of course, in that sort of a situation, you've put the furniture away and you don't have people sitting out there, eating or drinking.
Well, in every situation, if you have a surface that will rise like that, you have a permeable surface, which anything that falls on it that's pollutable will go down into the lagoon, and that's why I'm asking the question, because we've had issues with that in the past, whether or not, and it's clear that our planning director does not expect that you will be doing any dining or drinking out on that platform.
Yeah, I'm at Submerged Lands. God, I'm losing my mind here. You guys see me laughing at my stupidity. We've had several restaurants trying that, with like the Riverside Cafe, and we've cracked down on that. Also Dockside, so to bring them in compliance on that.
Well, I just
kind of thing.
wanted to make
And
it.
we had a big discussion, if you all recall, at the Planning and Zoning Board, whether we wanted to even allow that on non sovereign water.
But one of the things that was not included in the staff comments was saying that they would agree totally not to have that kind of an activity out on that platform.
Well, they would need approval to have that activity out there, and since they didn't request that, we never had to respond to that. I mean, they would have to have approval.
But could we specify that in the staff comments that they would have to assure that is not taking place?
I think if you get into approving negatives, you'll find that there's so many things. You won't let animals on the dock. You won't. How many things can you think of?
I understand. I'm just concerned that we had an occasion where another operator started doing this out on the beach, and then we had to go a retroactive approval. And I don't want to do retroactive approvals. All of a sudden they start doing it, then they come in and say we're doing it. We want approval to do it, and then we do a retroactive approval. I don't think that's wise.
No, and that's not our intent here. One thing I will point out, and I don't know if you can see this, but the property line makes this corner right here. The existing seawall actually has a radius to it, so it curves around this corner. And so probably 3/4 of this viewing platform is upland of the seawall, and then about a quarter of it is actually out over sovereign submerged land. So just in terms of that ratio, that is what it is. The other thing I would add too is that it's being designed more as a wood deck, so that it does have a drainage component to it.
Okay.
In fact, there is a storm drain underneath this deck to handle part of the overall stormwater system. So in terms of your concern about things running off into the river, we're not even pushing stormwater off here into the river. It's going to be going.
Okay, so that 20% or 25% that overhangs the seawall will be all slanted in, so that any water going on that will be coming onto the site rather than into the river. It's not perfectly level.
No, it's perfectly level. I mean, it'll be just like the boardwalk is today. I mean, water drains through it just like it does today. Any dock has.
I understand.
Is over water, so it's the same. But again, you shouldn't be getting food or that kind of thing on that space.
If it's perfectly level, it's possible, because your drainage on a perfectly level surface is questionable as to where it's going to go. It has to be slanted in order for drainage to guarantee that it's not going to go into the into a protected area. You have to have some sort of a slant in order to have the water go to where you want it to go.
Right, but if you don't
On a
have
perfectly flat surface, it's not necessarily going to go where you want it to go. Depends on the wind. Depends on the wind.
I mean, all our docks all docks made are flat surfaces, and you're going to get some runoff. The question is there's no activity in these areas that would create the other type of pollutants. You're going to get some runoff.
I understand. That's why I want to ensure that there's no activity out there.
Well, they have to get approval. Again, I get back to it.
Again,
they
retroactive
can't-
approvals are not happy. I'm not happy with that.
Well, I mean, if
We
it's
understand.
yeah,
We understand.
I mean,
I have a question of you.
Yes, sir.
What I don't understand is your boardwalk. I see where it ends right now. I'm talking, I believe, on the south side. Are we approving in your site plan? Are we approving? I thought I heard somebody say that a proposal for a future boardwalk to go to the end of the property. Is that correct?
We are proposing to extend the boardwalk all the way to the west property
Is that approval incorporated into this site plan?
It is, although it does have to have a separate
Additional?
permit. The city actually owns those submerged lands right in that particular section.
Yes.
So it is a city permit item.
it'll have to.
and not a
Yeah, it's
state.
both an FDP, which
Okay.
probably give an
Right.
exemption, but they'll have to have a license agreement that goes through city council.
That's
For instance, we have to get a submerged land lease for this portion of the viewing platform because it's over state lands.
State.
This part happens to be owned by the city.
Okay,
So
that's
it's just.
I
it's just
thought
a
I
difference in
understood that,
location.
but it's not. It's not the design is. It's so small we can't really see it effectively.
Oh.
But is the design actually shown on there, or is that just the seawall I'm looking at that's a lighter color?
No, it's actually the width of the boardwalk. It's about a 5-foot wide path. It'll match what's out there today.
Presently, it's concrete right now. If I
No,
it's not?
this top of the seawall is concrete, but adjacent to that, there's a
Okay.
boardwalk section that is down about a foot from the top of the seawall.
Okay, I understand. I think I understand it.
Is that what's referred to as, as a bench pad?
Well, the
We have a code here.
those are basically a sort of an upland little space on which we would put a bench.
Okay.
That's what that is.
And that's over,
That's
Don was
upland,
just
that's
referring
behind
to.
it.
Yeah,
That's on
okay.
the land side of the seawall.
And also what you've been talking about is on page 3. Those are Gale's number 8 and 9.
These things.
Okay.
Yep, I saw that.
Additional questions of Keith?
I guess the only overriding concern would be the use on that viewing platform. And, as you said, tables, chairs, umbrellas. There's not going to be a railing, so really Tim, the code would be ruling over that?
No, unless they want to do that. I mean, there's nothing.
I mean,
particular that would-
I think of like a private use. What if someone wanted to book a wedding on this? That'd be a stunning location.
Well,
You know?
I agree, but I mean, they have to have insurance and all this. If they decide they feel they need to do that to have these things. I don't want to speak for them, but we don't have anything. There's nothing in the code that requires that they have a
Yeah,
railing.
it seems like we shouldn't be overriding their use on it. It's their personal use. And I just wanted to be clear how
I think that's the point. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, if they want
exactly.
to do that, that's up to them. But there's
Yeah.
nothing that in the code that says that they're required to do that.
So, just as far as we're looking at it, it's a viewing platform. There's no fence around it, no railing,
Yeah,
flat.
that's
It's to code.
that was my
permits
original
and-
concern.
Yeah, I mean, typically along, in a boardwalk or a waterfront situation, you wouldn't have a railing. The only place we've talked about doing something would be along the east end because we don't want boats to dock there. So that may be a rope railing or something like that. But no, I think the intent is that there's not a railing around it per se.
That would be similar to what we have at our own fountain there, where we go through a gate into an open area where
Exactly.
there's no railing on our
Yeah.
particular city property
You
also.
can walk right off the dock at the end of
Right.
the fountain.
Right.
Just as you can anywhere, really.
Yeah. Seeing no additional questions?
Not of
Okay.
Keith, but I think maybe Gail. On the top right, the top left of this, there look to be parallel spaces drawn out. Are these, and I cannot understand what it's being referenced as?
Are you talking about these here, honey?
Yeah.
Those, and I'm sorry, those are actually symbols that represent, and they shouldn't even be on the drawing. They're underground tiebacks for that seawall that's out there.
Oh, dead
They're
man.
not
Okay.
parking
Like
spaces.
a dead man.
Okay,
And I
because that
apologize.
area's got, it's all mangroves.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the same thing here. These are also tiebacks. They came
Okay.
on some as-built drawings and they just didn't get turned off on the sheet. So
Thank you.
I had a feeling that's what that
Yeah.
was.
I didn't know.
they're dead
It
men.
did
and
look like
buried.
parking spaces at one point. Thank you.
Richard, you okay?
I do have a question, since you raised it, about the tiebacks for the seawall. How does that impact this development, the existing tiebacks for the existing seawall on this property?
It does. Well, we know that there are some tiebacks in this wall already. You can see the plates on the outside of the wall. Basically, once we get in and excavate and we figure out where they are and how long they are, then we'll deal with that. I mean, you essentially create a new way to anchor those things behind the wall where they're not going to impede on the building. We've talked about anchoring it to the building, things like that. There's ways to deal with that. But yeah, we expect that there are tiebacks, much like these in this wall.
Thanks.
We don't know how many, we don't know what condition they're in, but we'll find that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like
Thank
to
you.
now, I think, open it up to the public for public comment. So anybody would like to speak on this issue, please come forward. Public comment is open, please. Were you sworn in, sir?
Yes.
And would you give us your name then?
Brian Curley, 4101 Ocean Drive,
Thank you.
Apartment 5D. I strongly support this project. This is going to mean a lot of jobs. They're hiring a local GC. I'm going to count Keith as a local and saying hiring a local
He's
guy.
not anymore.
Yeah, it's good to see Keith again. He and I sat on this board a few years ago. But we got local guys using local people, and they've been known to do first-class projects. And I'm extremely pleased that this really one of the best sites in Vero, the whole county really, is going to be used for such a first-class project. Beyond that, I just wanted to voice my support. And also congratulations to the newest members, Honey and Larry. That was awesome. I would have voted for you too.
Thank you. Any additional people from the public like to speak? Please come forward, sir.
My name is Ken Puttick, and full disclosure, I'm a member of Quail. And I own the property at the corner of Indian River Boulevard and Royal Palm Point, and I'm strongly in favor of this. It will improve the whole block. It'll increase your tax base. For many years, it sat there and it's maybe quaint, but it's not nice before. This will improve the whole block. I'm very much in favor of it. They run a first-class organization, everything they do. All the money they've raised for charity for this town, everything they do is first class, and this will be also. I urge you to approve it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one else, I'm going to close public opinion, public comment. Board, any?
Do either the applicant or the staff have a closing argument or rebuttal in any way?
Anything if you'd like to say additionally? Steve? Kevin? Okay. Gail, nothing?
No, thank you.
All right.
I do have one question. When this road concurrency was met because of the county, do you know when they determined their figure for Indian River Boulevard about vehicle trips? The project was below an 8? No? Okay.
I have a question for staff. We've a number of years ago had a noise issue that took place, conflict between residents of the Fingers and the Riverside Cafe. And so my question would be for staff, under what license or permit would entertainment
That's a good question.
be considered should the restaurant want to go in that direction?
It would have to comply with our noise ordinance, and I somehow doubt that it's going to be an issue like the music from Riverside Cafe.
Yeah, what we get into, and when they're on the river, just like Riverside Cafe, that noise does seem to travel. So usually the 10 o'clock's the magic hour. And after 10 o'clock, we start getting complaints, and the police get a complaint. We try to follow up on it. If you all recall the Joey situation, that was, but I think that they understand the rules, and we'll have to comply. If not, they will have some code enforcement. I don't think we have any evidence now to say that they're going to violate it, that they can't have any outdoor entertainment. But I think that, you get to 10 o'clock, you really have to, no amplified noise outside, and you need to close the door, or it will travel across the river, especially we got some residents nearby.
Is the only area for outdoor entertainment then on that platform that they're talking about?
No, I believe their restaurant they have an outdoor dining area that's covered. Most of it's covered, but it is outdoor, and I assume they could do entertainment out there. I don't know what their plans are, but
Well, the codes cover it. I remember working on them.
Oh.
That was a big problem.
And
then.
we've been able to uphold our noise
Yeah,
code in
right.
court, and then we do enforce it. I mean,
That's why we have codes.
Tim's right. Our noise ordinance has been upheld by a local judge, and we use the reasonable person standard, not the decibel standard. And that seems to be the standard that's most upheld around the country. So, and
Any further discussion among the board members? Then I'm looking for somebody to have a motion.
I would move we go ahead with this, recommended to council with the qualification for those two areas to come into compliance, number 11 and 13.
Could I ask you maybe include all of those as opposed
Oh,
to
yeah.
go back that way?
Okay. Based on the compliance, numbers 1 through 13, because all those permits have to be brought up.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
You have a second? Any further discussion? I think we're ready to call a vote.
Mrs. Hillman?
Yes.
Ms. Polinsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Manous?
Yes.
Mr. Croteau?
Yes.
Mr. Laufer?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good.
it's going to be beautiful.
I know they'll do a good job. That's what's good about it, I think.
We've been meeting there for years.
Mm.
Yeah, we're going to miss a lot. But we'll miss the view.
Does anybody need a break for a couple minutes? Everybody's okay? Okay. I'm fine.
Oh, you're very
welcome.
Thank you.
You have a
Congratulations.
I know you will.
You're going to have a class. You're going to have a class act there.
Currently, right now, we
I didn't want to.
Sure that. Thank you, Steve.
we're very sensitive.
Oh, I know.
So,
Which is good.
and our member, we have a lot of young members, places that
It's Vero.
It has nothing to do with being called Zero Beach, does
we
it?
talked about that when we first classes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we don't plan to operate or birthdays, anniversaries, or
I'm sure it's not going to be
Oh, but if
Yeah, I just
sunrise
arrived.
like that, our son and his wife got married at the Sunrise on the beach 2 years ago, and that spot is fantastic.
and we'll send out some more information.
Yeah.
Appreciate the question.
Thank you, Kim. Okay.
Congratulations.
I'd like to proceed with our meeting. Tim, are there any planning department matters?
Before I just want to point out, Ms. Manous, you said to the city council, I think you're having my problems today. Remember, you have the final say. It's not going to the city council.
That's right.
Sorry.
It's all right.
There's nothing here, yes.
Nothing here goes to city council.
Pardon?
Not on this type of issue.
Oh, I will do that. Okay. Ms. Lyon just want to point out to me the Mulligan's thing was not appealed to circuit court, so it stands, your decision. All right.
Good.
I'm going to go over a few items. First is our annual report is required by City Council. If you don't mind, I'll do as we've done in the past, work with the chair. We'll do a draft and come back to you at the 18th meeting for your input and approval of that so it can go to City Council.
Board's okay with that?
What is
Absolutely.
it? The what?
The annual report. You're required to do that under the code.
He and I meet kind of it, and then we bring it back.
That's fine.
Good enough?
Absolutely. No problem.
We have a scheduled hearing on December 18th, your next meeting. This will be for some modifications to our text, and it really has to do with the or vacation short-term rentals. I mean, but it does cover more than just that. That basically we're not changing our application interpretation, but just clarifying and updating it so it's specifically worded. It's no changes in what we've done historically, but it'll be pretty clear in there for anybody who has a question about how we apply these. And the council has been very adamant about that, so I believe, based on my discussions, once we go through this, and it's scheduled for January 6th before the City Council, but we're going to have a hearing before you, so you'll have some input, that we will be fairly rigorously enforcing the vacation rental ordinance. So we'll see how that goes.
Tim, can I ask you?
Yes, sir.
Is it more of a clarification than a modification?
It's not a modification
At
of
all?
vacation rental. No.
Okay.
No, it is how we've historically. In fact, we followed. I did my opinion letter that I did back in 11 is exact. We followed that in how the regulations have been clarified, as well as some of it comes right from the dictionary. We've used a common dictionary for terms like transient and that, which is pretty close. So we think that it takes care of some of the issues that may have been brought up at the circuit court. And we're just guessing because we never got any finding from them other than they made a decision and there wasn't any justification of how or why their opinion of how they reached that conclusion. So that'll be coming before you at the next meeting. There's some other minor things in there, but I will do a full staff report, which I was not able to do for the City Council, that will kind of go into a little more detail. So there are a couple other items in there that be of interest to you.
Can I just ask a question of Peggy? Are they required to give us any more information, or is that it on the ruling on the short-term rental? Is that just it?
City Council elected not to appeal that decision, and so that was.
Or ask for further opinion on that, right?
And in fact, in some ways, we decided it might not be best to seek any further clarification,
Yes. Sure.
given the unsettled nature of the whole issue at the state level.
Gray is better sometimes.
Okay.
Okay.
And just wanted to, in February, we need to send a letter to the state telling them we're going to update, that we have to update our comp plan or not update it. As your professional planner, we've got to update that comp plan. It's been over 20 years. There is no way that we can say that plan can't be updated. The only thing is we have a year to get the whole plan done, if we pass that period of time, they will hold up any other comp plan amendments that we want to do. So we have the staff's going to be working on that. To get it done, we're probably going to do workshops, but we're going to do a lot of work before we show up at the workshop. So it's not going to be as, shall we say, intensive participation of the public as we'd like, but we'll never get this thing done if I have to go through what we did in the overlay district. So we're going to try to, what we're really going to use as a good resource will be the vision plan and try to take that into the comp plan, which should have been done back years ago, to really give it some teeth that we don't have in there. So that'll be one of our primary things, much less update everything. I mean, we have out of date everything in there. So so we have to do a letter, and I sent to the state about that. But I'm probably going to have to talk to the city manager. We should chat about this, do we want the city council. We need to inform them of what we're going to do, and they're aware. But I just want them to understand what we have to go through.
Tim, I have a concern.
Yeah.
This particular application today bothered me a little bit. I'm thinking ahead if another club like Quail Valley bought, say, Waldo's or bought
Yes.
any of these on the beach and made them private, like they do on the West Coast. Have you ever been to Marco Island? I mean, you can't even get to everything is private, everything is gated, and you have to be a member to do that. I'm really concerned that we don't have any mechanism to limit it. And we have it's growing. It's becoming a very popular thing. Everybody wants to be gated. Everybody wants to be protected. But we have general public here that want to be able to go to commercial organizations. I mean, when it says commercial, when I read the application initially, it didn't read to me that it was going to be a private club. It was going to be a restaurant and a hotel. And that's not what this is. So, is there any way of defining it in a way that can protect us as a community from being all private clubs?
I think our problem is you get into the point where the public interest is being served and where the community interest. So, for instance, if on Royal Palm Point, we would almost have to have some regs or policies in place that deal with public access, but we can't unilaterally apply it. And that's the problem. We get into the court cases, particularly California, on taking issues, and that you're getting into some legal issues when you do that. I know what you're saying. On our overlay district on the beach, we require when you go through that there is access provided. Even that is coming close to some of those.
Okay, I'm just concerned that we're going to start losing our public access to our commercial operations.
I think to answer some of it, Don, is that if we have incentive programs built in, we can then add things in as part of incentive program. If you want to do this, that's how we've done, say, the plan development. You want to do this, for the public, we want to have this in return. You see what I mean? And if we have a program like that, that works much better from a standpoint of a legal basis than unilaterally. Then we get in trouble, and I'm sure Peggy can explain all that to you all. So I think that is a better situation.
I understand. I just want to, is there something we can do that we can get some control over this before it gets out of hand?
Well, I think we're pretty well protected mostly on the Berea public beaches. The real problem will be on the lagoon.
But the lagoon is just as important.
But, we have, I don't know what an easy answer to that is. All I can say is if I really recommend we do an approach where we do incentives that we allow people to do certain things, but in return you're going to give some public benefit to it. And that's how you do it. It's an easier way to defend that, as long as there's some relationship between the public benefit and what they're getting out of it, and you're not just giving away, contracting away the public's interest.
And that being done legislatively, so
that would be done
legislatively,
rather than case you would do it legislatively. Exactly.
Well, it's like retroactively, like we had two high rises go up on the beach, and all of a sudden we put in a height restriction in the county. So I'm just looking at this as being, maybe we should think about some way of defining it and controlling it.
I think what I would suggest, we've got to do a comp plan stuff. That might be a good policy in the comp plan to put in there to start.
Well, that's what I was suggesting.
Because I want to be sure, you want to be sure that there's a commitment in the community and the city council and policy to do that kind of thing. There's strong property rights involved here.
I understand that, but there's also public.
And I agree.
Public interest is paramount,
and that's always a balancing act here. Even in the case of the what just came before you. When I asked them that question about public access, they were still debating it, and they're just saying that their business model wouldn't work that way. So and I did. Yeah. That's how it is. But I think if we're going to do anything, we need to do it in a way that is defensible and it makes a lot of sense. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like the Vero Beach Hotel and Club. That could have been. They could shut that off any time because they keep it open to the public because it works for them from a business standpoint.
Right. Well, it's not. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And they let the public come into their restaurant, but it's a club. I mean, it's like.
Well, they're running it as they're
running it as a public restaurant, which is fine.
That's fine.
But I'm just saying they could shut it off any time, right? They can make it just like this one is as a private club because they got members that own the place.
They certainly could do that if it.
So.
And to your point, before the Vero Beach Hotel was built, the old Aquarius was proposed to be a private club, and that's where the new Vero Beach Hotel addition is. So
That's why I'm raising it. I'm just concerned that if we have a bunch of private clubs, we have a very desirable location for this kind of thing. We certainly have a population on the island that can afford all these private clubs. We have a large population on the mainland that can't. And I'm just
can't
concerned.
afford the private clubs.
Exactly.
I live on the
So
island.
my feeling is, why are we shutting off? And why are we opening ourselves up?
No, I understand.
Not having
And
control of this.
I
that's all.
think it's some issue that we could put in address in the comp plan, at least to get to start getting discussions going.
Good.
On it. Okay. I think our overlay district does deal with some of that because that's also incentive based, but they have to provide public access that we don't want to eliminate.
Let's
that.
let's look at it just a little bit different perspective on the same thing. If we look at the lobster shanty that was there, it either for some reason that owner decided to sell, and he decided to sell for what reason? Either he was economically wasn't feasible and meeting his expectations, or he had other uses for his assets, or a lot of other reasons. And the private sector, who makes restaurants work or not work, didn't have the initiative or the incentive to purchase the property, and these people did. So whatever the marketplace was driving actually occurred. I mean, if they would have wanted more than Mr. Mulvey and Kevin wanted there, they would have bought it and paid a higher price for it. But the economics of that property didn't work, or they didn't perceive that they could work. Therefore, our system of free enterprise works. And sometimes I see just the opposite occurring. Private clubs and private golf courses, another thing, turn to public when the economics turn around also, and they open up private clubs to the public to get more people into them. So this can work in either direction depending on the economics of the situation, and I don't think that government should be driving that train to tell the private industry and private businesses what to do in our community. And I'm not talking about private beach access and et cetera, but as the economics change and modify, our society and businesses will do likewise.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, the other thing is some communities go and that's where you see on waterfront properties where they're actually purchasing it, marinas and stuff. They're deliberately doing that, but that costs a lot of money. And I can tell you, having in the Keys, we purchased a couple places and lost our tails on that.
Oh yeah, I mean that
collectively.
happens.
I mean, government isn't very good at.
But if you carry Larry's argument all the way down, we would not have any planning and zoning. Because I ran it. Because what you're saying is private industry trumps everything, and therefore you no longer have planning and zoning. Because I had that argument up north when I wrote my first zoning ordinance up north, and what the argument from the public was, we didn't have zoning, we don't need it. I want to be able to do anything I want to on my property.
No, that doesn't agree at all. Mr. Mulvey met all kinds of criteria today in our city to be able to do his project. He didn't have an open book there. He complied with everything that the city wanted. And if the city wants more ordinances, this board, if the people bring it forward, we will create those ordinances to meet that criteria. Mm-hmm. But I can't ask more than what we asked him to do. I mean,
I'm just suggesting that we add a criteria that there be public access, especially if you have a restaurant.
The noise aspect of it and everything else, we have covered. I think we have plenty of rules.
I agree we have plenty of rules. I'm just suggesting that I'm a little concerned that the marketplace can be counter to public interest, and that's why government exists.
That's true. I agree with that. But in this case, I think we have a good balance right now. I don't want to move it further to more government.
Following up with your opening comments about the people who are very upset about losing Jack Baker's, that area, that's been there historically for a long time. A lot of families have enjoyed it. I know mine did, for years and years and years. And when you lose something that's been important, you're going to be angry. That's a fact. And so I think that accounts for a lot of what we're hearing and seeing in these emails that have been coming. But if it's important to understand that the property was bought and it's the right of these people to do as they will. If these people who had been upset were in a position to influence anything, it would have been well before it ever reached us. So if things are going to change, it's got to change before it gets here.
Well, exactly. Yeah. That's okay. Exactly why I brought this up. In the comp plan, we can address these things before they become a problem. And right now we still might approve this thing, not a problem. And I don't think anybody had any serious problems with this project. I'm just looking ahead, and we have to look ahead and say, is this a canary in the coal mine deal, where we're starting to have this kind of a movement. We have more and more private clubs, which is becoming a mechanism where people don't want to associate with people other than in their club or class or what have you. And we got to protect ourselves from having this start affecting our. It'll affect our tourism. It'll affect a lot of things. So, here we're putting in 15 new hotel rooms, and nobody in the public is going to be able to use them. And we need hotel rooms.
We don't know how this is going to incentivize the rest of Royal Palm Point either.
I think it's going to be a benefit for Royal Palm Point. I'm just saying I'm concerned if the same kind of things start happening in other parts of our community, and we start shutting off. We come up with areas in our commercial areas where all of a sudden there's a private club, there's a store, private club, there's a store, that kind of stuff. I think that's my concern.
Okay. I think we could debate this all afternoon and into the night.
No. I'm just giving you, something to think about.
I understand.
Tim, might you have a proposed calendar for this development? Have they given you any kind of a projection?
Well, not yet, because I think they're they still have a few things to do on the site plan, but I think it's going to take probably good 6 months to a year. It's a big project. I mean,
before they break ground.
Oh, no, it'll be breaking ground. I mean, to finish the project.
Oh, that's what I say.
No, I think they're ready to. They still haven't done the structural drawing, so I don't know how close they are to even having the permits already. I mean, this was the first step.
They have a lot of permits.
Yeah, and this is, as I said, it's involving some storm drainage and flood proofing and all that. So there's a little more structural engineering going on here than a typical project. Well, this is one of the few that I know that's in a flood zone.
Yeah. Is the demolition tied to the permit for the project?
I assume they didn't tell me when they're going to do the demolition. My guess is possibly with the approval today, they may feel comfortable going ahead with the. Obviously they didn't want to do anything until they got the permit. And I believe they own the property that they closed on it already. So I don't know that for certain. When they applied, they were under another kind of. They didn't own the property outright.
And just like Mulligan's, there's a 30-day appeal period. So I imagine being very cautious, they'll wait that 30 days before they take it.
Actually, have a 10-day on this thing.
Site plan. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But that could be
10 days. Yeah. I'd wait.
She's right. Just to be on the safe side. But they have a few things yet to go. So, but if I find out some more information, I certainly bring that up to y'all as we move along on this.
It's such an important site. Everybody.
Oh no, I understand.
I think we'd like to be kept in the loop as far as what the target dates are.
And the newspapers will be calling, wanting to know what's going on anyway. So it's probably good.
Tim, do you have any more matters?
No, sir. That's all.
Planning board member matters.
I already had mine.
I have one. I would like to comment on the Osceola Park getting their monument for a historic monument, and I would like to attend that, but that day happened to be a bell ringer for the Salvation Army at Publix, so I can't attend. But I would like to say that I think those people in that area, if they're not familiar with it, it is this Saturday at 10 a.m., and it's at 1905 20th Avenue, and there's going to be Anna Brady, who I think most of us know is going to do a tour after it. And I'm reading an article. I'm not so smart. I'm just kind of glancing down at that. But I think it's worthwhile for the citizens in that area on both sides to see that and get involved and see what that means. We hope that it sparks ownership in there that will take as much pride as they can and increase their pride in their community and save what should be saved and what should be kept for our community. And I think this kind of recognition is a positive thing for our community, and I hope that we do more of this. And I think ancillary things to that marker are always nice in the community, whether it's lighting or it's a corner restoration or it's someplace. If the community gets involved, and I think we're seeing them over there trying to move their community better and better and better, and I hope that works well for them, and I hope we'll take notice of it in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other thing to come before us today?
Move we adjourn.
We're so adjourned.